Hey friends, this is Chris. Welcome back to the channel. So actually, the wife and I, we're heading out to Vietnam today. I'm really looking forward to showing you the sights and sounds. Honestly, I'm just really excited. And don't worry, I'll still cover the news and things like that. There's always something fun to talk about. And honestly, I like to keep up on things and also keep you up. But I do want to show you kind of what we're up to. Let me flip around the screen here. You guys can see there's our plane. We're just getting ready to board. And actually in about 5 minutes or so. The one thing though I want to mention, actually that might be us. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. So guys, I want to address a couple of comments that we got in recently. Someone's making a comment on that they don't see recession like right now. They don't see people cutting back on spending because we just had like this crazy, was it Memorial Day weekend with lots of people traveling. So the thing is you gotta understand about this stuff is that there's sort of indicators that are the past or indicators going forward. So the recent data, I think our food might be here. So, hey, okay. So we just got some food here, looks good. This is squid and then actually a little bit of rice too. Yum, okay, well that does look good. So sorry about that interruption guys. We were just having some lunch and now I got some time to chat with you. So actually, this is Vietnam, it's fantastic and we'll show you a bit more and I know it doesn't look like Vietnam, but trust me, we're there, we're at Phu Quoc Island. Hey friends, so want to share some breaking news. Apple could be in trouble in the EU, and we talked about this possibly happening, but now this is the headlines. Brussels accuses Apple of breaking EU competition rules. And the question I pose to you is Apple a monopoly? Are they doing monopoly type practices? Now the early sort of reports are saying that Apple could face fines of up to 10% of their revenue. That's quite a bit. And I guess if they're a repeat offender, could be 20%, pretty crazy, right? And this is what it says. It says, Brussels has accused Apple of stifling competition on its App Store, marking the first time regulators have used new digital rules on a big tech group. And if they go after Apple, would they go after Google, Microsoft, etc.? There's also some interesting news to where the Chinese EVs, I guess they're gonna be negotiating with the EU regarding the tariffs, that kind of stuff. So, when you hear these kind of announcements, right, there's always some negotiations going on because it's not like the EU necessarily wants to kick out Apple completely. You don't want to piss off all the Apple users and things like that, right? The EU is just trying to find a way to, protect users at one point and also to, obviously generate some revenue for themselves. I say obviously because, that's why you pass these kind of regulations. There's kind of a double-pronged thing. Also says here, I'll read some more. It says, the European Commission's regulatory action falls under the Digital Markets Act, as we're calling this thing. Stringent rules designed to break the dominance of large technology platforms and help startups, right? So that's a good thing, right? The move against Apple is a first report in the Financial Times, right? If found guilty, Apple faces a penalty up to 10% of its global annual revenue. So actually, not just EU revenue, but global annual revenue. More we have, says here, the 20% fines could be as if it's repeated. This is a quote here from Thierry Breton, the EU regulator person, says, Apple's new slogan should be act different. Today we take further steps, that is, to ensure Apple complies with the DMA rules. They're talking about here, fees include a charge of 50 cents per download that companies have to pay if their app is used by more than 1 million people. That's a lot. 50 cents per download the company has to pay. So this is where the fines can be actually pretty large pretty quickly. I think this is something that a lot of the big tech companies are certainly concerned about. I mean, obviously, from the surface, they're always either going to say no comment or we'll work with the regulators to resolve this issue. I think, though, the EU is much stiffer against Apple. And this doesn't even seem to necessarily even address, I don't see anything particularly about AI. Because we talked about that before, guys, that could be an issue both in Europe, USA, and China. So what am I talking about? Do you guys remember when, and for those of you who are older, you probably remember this, when Microsoft started, bundling the browser, was the Internet Explorer, with their operating system, the basic idea would be that would be the default browser. And that sort of canceled out other browsers. And that's a big deal because there used to be other choices on browsers, right? Essentially, though, is that for sort of the average user, they don't necessarily think to download a browser. These days, I think people are a little bit more aware, but back then, not necessarily. But even today, that's the question. Like, say, for example, grandma or grandpa, right? In your particular situation, when they get a new phone or a new computer, are they downloading, say, your Firefox or your Opera or your Google Chrome or whatever, or are they just going with the default? So Windows, it would be your, it's not Internet Explorer anymore. They got a new one. I don't use it. I can't remember what it's called. I know Apple's got Safari. I don't actually use that one. I'm more of a Chrome person, but I do like Firefox and Opera. There's also an issue too as well where like, I'm talking about Apple, and I can't speak to Samsung, you guys can let me know on that, but Apple's got to deal with Google to where like when you first open up your phone, Google's your default engine, right? And it could be another one. So I mentioned this stuff is because what about the AI situation, right? What's going to be your default AI? Now, in Apple situation, if they're integrating this stuff into the system, you don't really have a choice. And so that's the question is like, is that fair to consumer? Is that fair to startups? So, you know, in the discussion here, the Brussels saying, hey, we're trying to protect startups. So I completely understand. I think one of the big problems we have right now in tech is that many companies, their dream is like, hey, I want to be a startup company and I'm going to sell to Apple, I'm going to sell to Google or whatever, right? So the thing we should be thinking about is like, how can we get more competition, not necessarily less competition? The other thing too, which I think is big, is what about China? What are they going to say about Apple's integration of AI? What if, for example, I Google something that says, hey, you know, who is the rightful government of China, right? Is it Taiwan? is it China? And obviously, if you're on the mainland, just me even suggesting this would really tick you off. Or, you know, let's say you ask AI, where is the border between the Philippines and China in the ocean, right? Because right now they're fighting over that kind of stuff. You can talk about borders in any number of countries. I live in Korea. There's always border disputes with Japan. There's a group of islands that they fight over. There's issues of this stuff all the time, right? And that's just some simple questions. You could talk about other types of questions as well, and any number of things where facts can be disputed. The other thing too I want to mention with this stuff, guys, is people have asked, you know, a lot, what's going on with the consumer? Now, I made a video recently regarding that, saying that, hey, this could be a consumer-led recession. And someone actually made a really interesting point to where you could make the case that the government wants to put out that kind of narrative, right? To sort of, it's your problem, the consumer, it's not us and our policies. I thought that was a very interesting and astute observation. Another, and guys, I read all of your comments, another person made a comment that, hey, Chris, I don't see consumers in my neck of the woods, or I don't see consumers cutting back. Hey, just look at the Memorial Day travel spending, right? That still remained very, very strong. What's going on with that? So this would be my point of view in that. So the last video we made, we looked at some McKinsey data where people are saying, hey, they're going to be cutting back, trading down, right? So instead of choosing the more expensive product or more expensive place to go, you're going to like trade down and go a little bit lesser. So you're still spending, but you're doing lesser. And someone brought up the point like, well, hey, when I go to Costco, everyone's spending like nuts, but that's actually proving the point because Costco would be kind of more the discount side. The question would be, are people going to say like a Whole Foods and spending like crazy, right? Or are they slowing down at Whole Foods and then going just to your Albertsons or something of that nature? And then also too, regarding the Memorial Day travel, yes, travel may be up like crazy, but the indicators, you know, what's going to happen, say, is it Labor Day, is the September one, is that they can continue? And there's another interesting sort of bias you get when you do surveys, when you ask someone, hey, do you think about spending money? And you kind of feel guilty if you say no. Say yes. I think about saving money, right? I mean, I don't know if I said that correctly, but essentially people kind of want to make themselves look good, but the reality ends up being in the data, right? So we know, for example, in the data, credit card delinquencies are going up. Now, the interesting would be is that, say, come this Labor Day, maybe spending doesn't necessarily decrease. I'm saying maybe, for example, but what if delinquencies go up, but if we see credit card balances go up, this kind of thing. So it's not necessarily that people are cutting back as much as they should, that they're just putting it on borrowed time, borrowed credit. My personal opinion on this stuff, and I always talk about this so much on the channel, yes, we talk about markets, yes, we totally do, but I also want to have a full inclusion of stuff. We should also talk about your job security, talk about your spending habits, these kind of things, and also too, staying informed. You want to have a general sense of sort of what's the forecast on things. So my personal opinion on this stuff is the Fed's not going to cut anytime soon. They keep saying that. I know the market's dreaming about that. And I also mentioned as well, even if the Fed does make some sort of interest rate cut, it may not necessarily be for a good reason. Like, so what if they see in the data that things are slowing down too much? We just saw last month there was how can I say, the retail sales came in a little bit weaker than expected. I think the expectation on the street was like 0.2% increase in retail sales that came in at 0.1%. And just wasn't what people had expected. And so this is sort of the question we're going to see is are people going to keep spending? How's Christmas going to look this year? What are you going to tell the kids? Hey, we're having a great Christmas like normal, or we're gonna have to cut back. Mom and Dad are, you know, it's slowing down a bit, or you know, you're not gonna get the full Star Destroyer, or was it called the Death Star, because they changed the name for the new movie. So trust me, I know what the Death Star is, but I think the new one is like Planet Destroyer or something like that. But you're not gonna get the full play set. You're just gonna get a, you know, a fighter or two. Other than that, guys, things are going great. If you want to see some more of our life here in Vietnam, we're here for a bit. Check out our vlog channel, and we've been here all week, and it's just fantastic. I'm smiling every day, but I'm still going to hang out with you guys because I do keep track of the news